Hey everyone, welcome back. In this episode, we're going to implement smart pagination. And the first piece of development I'm going to be doing in my index.cs HTML page, and then we're going to transfer over it back to our backend because it'll be a little bit easier to do the whole compilation thing here. Now, the way I want to do my implementation for the smart pagination, as you can see, I've added a little bit more posts and I have reduced the number of blogs per page to 1 just to emphasize the point about having a smart pagination, right? So you can see the 1 and 2 are bleeding off, and we have this scrolling thing that we don't really want here. The way that I have chosen to do this is I'm gonna take a range of 5. So if I'm on page 5, I want number 3, number 4, numbers 5, 6, and 7 to display, and the number 2 will be hidden, and the number 1 and number 15 is my last one. Yeah, I want to be able to jump to those two. Okay. So let's go ahead and start with trying to render a list. Okay, so this is how I'm going to be doing it. And let me actually keep this here. So what I want to do is I want to create a list of integers, and each integer is going to be representing the page that I want to display, and that page I want to be appending to that list. All right, so let's go ahead and make a list. And these are going to be pages, so let's go ahead and initialize this list as well. Okay, so the first thing that we can do is basically assume a midpoint, right? So let's say I'm on page number 3, right? I want page number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 and number 5 displayed. If I'm on page number 4, that's when the midpoint starts to shift. So if I'm on 3 or below, the midpoint really, I can't select pages number -2 and 0 and -1, so I don't want those. So if I'm in range of 5, that's going to be 3 is going to be my lowest midpoint. Okay, so that's 2 from the border. So let's go ahead and put a comment here. So range of 5 and +2 from border, and this can really be from left border or -2 from right border. Okay, so my border is really the first page, and that's the one that I basically I don't want to hit. So what I want to do is I always want to be snapping from the first page. So let's go ahead. I'll just make a midpoint and stop ranting. So, and this midpoint is going to be, at first, it's going to be selected from the page number, right? So whatever page I'm on, I just want that to be my midpoint. And if my midpoint is less than 3, so if we are in 1 or 2 pages, I want it to snap back to 3. Okay, we can we can simplify this by putting an inline expression here, but we will do the simplification later. So now I'm basically snapping back to the third page. All right, so now what I can do is I can create a range by using a for loop. And let's go ahead and make int I, and we'll start at page number 1. And then I want to, and sorry, not page number 1, because this is going to be a range of 5. If we're on page number 3, we want it to go 3, 2, 1. So we're going to go -2. All right. So we're going to grab the midpoint and say -2. This will put us at page number 1. And then we will go to midpoint +2. Okay. And all I want to do is iterate through this. And let me put this back. And I also want to, if we are at number 3, so 3 + 2 is 5. And if I am going to increment I wanted to include the 5, so I'm going to go ahead and say equals here. Okay. So now let's just go ahead, and for all these pages, let's add the I here. And now in here, instead of this for loop, we can say for each, and delete all of this, and let's say variable p in pages. Okay. We will replace all the i's with p's, like this. Now let's go ahead and refresh this and see what we get. All right, so you can see if we're on page number 3, we get this range. If we're on page number 4, we get the other range. So we're always staying in range of what's it called, of 5. And if I go to 2 or 1, you can see that this range is not being generated because it's still considering number 3 as our midpoint. Okay, and if I go to the very last page, you can see I'm ending up at a page that I don't want to end up in. So I'm hitting this, I don't have this same snapback of the midpoint. So if I am over my maximum page, which the page count we have in the model, we can basically do the same. So we can calculate this midpoint again, and we can say else if midpoint is more than model dot page count. So this is the total amount of pages, and again, this -2 from the border. So let's go ahead and just put -2 here. I want to just go ahead and say midpoint equals model the page count -2. Okay, so if I do this, let's go ahead, refresh. Now if I'm on page 13, 14, or 15, you can see that it's not displaying the next pages because it's snapping the midpoint to number 13. Okay, so the next thing that I want to sort out is the page number 1 being displayed when I'm on page number 4. And you can see that there's a page number 2 here. So I want to put 3 dots in between them, but only when we're on page number 5. So we will need to calculate the difference between these points. So let's go ahead and basically sort the number 1 first. Okay, so I always want to display the first page. And how can I know? And the first page is always going to be first. So essentially what I can do, I can go into pages, I can grab the very first number, and I can say, right, if the first number isn't the first page, let's go ahead and add the first page, right? So we will need to go ahead and grab the pages. We will need to not append, but rather prepend. So we're inserting at the beginning. And I'm just gonna prepend the first one. Now this returns an enumerable, so I will have to call toList on this. All right, so let's save that, give this a refresh, and now you can see that I'm getting page number 1. And if I go to page number 5, I am getting this sort of empty space that I want to fill with the 3 dots. So here I don't want the 3 dots, I just want the number 1. But how do I know if I need to put the 3 dots? Well, I can basically calculate, right? If the difference between the page the page at the first place and the page at the second place is more than 1, then we can basically go ahead and say, right, give me the 3 dots. Okay, and I'm gonna use, because we have a number list, I'm gonna use -1 to represent the 3 dots. All right, so let's go ahead and say if pages number 1 minus pages 0. So this is the page in the second position, and this is the page in the first position, or rather at the 0. So 1 at 0 and 2 at 1. If this is more than 1, this is again where I want to do this prepend. Okay, and I want to prepend -1 here. But one thing is it will insert it before the 1. So what I really want to do is I want to insert it, and I want to insert it at index number 1. And I don't think I will need a list here anymore. I can just, I can just have the insert, and this is void. So I'm assuming that it's going to mutate my list. Okay, so let's go ahead and refresh this. We don't get the -1, and if I go to number 5 and number 6, you can see we get the -1, but if I go back to number 4, the -1 is missing. So let's go ahead and say if p equals -1, we will insert a span. If I learn how to create an HTML element, give it the 3 dots, and let's give this a closing else tag. Format this, give this a refresh. And it seems like I need to recompile, so let me run this again. So let's jump to page number 5, and I get the 3 dots. I will want to push this, so let's go ahead and I'll just inline styles here. Line height 2. Okay. And maybe a little bit more, 2.5. Or maybe no, wait, let me make the buttons smaller first. Because they are a little bit, they're tall boys, these guys. Let's cut the padding on the side to 0.5 rem. I mean on the top and bottom. Let's refresh this and see what it looks like. Control 5 refresh. Okay, so that was actually on the side. Let's put it here, 0.5, 0.5, and make the button slightly wider. Okay, so that looks alright. Let's just 3 dots, and let's cut these styles into this class. So I'm gonna grab this, put this here. Font size, I'm gonna give it like 24 pixels to start with. Let's remove the styles tag here, and let's give it a class of 3 dots. Let's give this a refresh. Alright, and I think we can reduce the height now as well. 1.5. I think even further. That was a little bit too big. 1. So if we're going to be on page number 3, we're going to lose the dots. Number 4, we're not going to see them. Number 5, that's all good. Now let's go ahead and go to the other part. And again, we're going to be facing the same issue. Essentially, I want number 15 to be displaying there constantly. Okay, so if I go back to my index page, and let's say if pages and the index will have to be pages.count, I want to essentially compare if this value doesn't equal to model.pageCount. This is the maximum amount of pages, and this number is going to be equal 15. And if the last number isn't 15, I want to go ahead and add it. Okay, so let's go ahead and I guess we can just reuse the insert here actually instead of append and prepend, and let's actually use this here as well, like so. And pages.insert, so I want to insert at the very last index, and I will actually need to use -1 here, and I will need to use this index here as well. And let's go ahead and say insert the page count at the end. Alright, so let's give this a refresh. Okay, so it looks like we inserted 1 before that, so this was actually a mistake. So let's go ahead and insert it right at the end. So the only thing that we're missing now is the 14. So again, same principle as we have here. Let's go ahead, grab this if statement, and we want to replace it, but from the other side. So let's grab the last element, and we want to grab the element before that. And if the difference between the two is more than 1, then we want to insert the dots. And let's say we want to insert the dots right before page number 15. Okay, so let's go ahead and give this a refresh. So we're on page number 12, that's good, we don't have the dots. We're on page number 11, and now we get the dots. Okay, so that's pretty much it for smart pagination. Let's go ahead and clean this up. I'm gonna go ahead, take all of this and cut it. I'm gonna go into my repository, and I'm gonna create a private enumerable int, and let's say page numbers. Okay, and let's paste this into here. We'll need to give it a few parameters. So page number and int, let's say page count, and let's, wherever we have model dot, we can go ahead and basically grab this current document and replace all of them. And we'll need to convert these to smaller cases here, 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 and here. and we will need to return pages here. So the way we can actually simplify this here before going off is, let's say if it's less than 3, let's go ahead and supply 3, otherwise we want the page number, and we can also actually say if otherwise if page number is more than this, let's say we want page count -2, right? And otherwise just give us the page number that we want. Okay, and now we can replace this. Okay, so this is still quite readable, so I'm going to remove these comments since I don't want them anymore, and we can supply this list of numbers to our index view model. So what we can do is, let's go ahead and say pages here, and we will say equals page numbers. We will supply the page number and page count, put a comma here, and now we can go ahead, press Alt Enter, and generate property index view model.pages. Press Enter here, and I think page count doesn't exist here. I actually have post count. Okay. Okay, so I got confused there for a second. So we have the page count here. So let's go ahead and actually extract this here. So page count equals this, and now we can assign page count here, pass the page count to this function here, and let's actually give this a big P. All right. So now what we can do is we can go to the index page. Let's remove this part here, and now we can grab model pages and iterate through them like this. So let's go ahead and run this and see if this still works. Okay, so page number 1 looks okay, and number 4, yep, good. Okay, so this actually looks quite alright. Next thing that I would actually want to do is, this looks a little bit ugly on my front page. So what I will do is I will actually go ahead and put it into a partial view. So let's go into shared, and let's call it blog pagination.cshtml. And then for our model, we can supply 2 things. Int, we'll call it page, the current page, and int, we'll call it pages. And this is actually will be an enumerable of pages, right? So I am creating a tuple here, and this is what I'm going to be passing to my block pagination. I think that's the only thing I'll need, or will I need the page count? I don't think so. No. Let's go ahead, copy this, cut it, put it in here, and we can grab the page. We can really copy the name, call it page number. And let's see if the errors go away. I will also need the model. Okay, you know what? I will make my life easier, and I'm just gonna copy the model, and I am gonna paste it here. So index view model, we're just going to reuse it. Okay, now let's save this. Let's go ahead and say partial and name, and I will need to supply the name, which is going to be blog pagination, and I can supply a model, which I can just supply the same model. And I guess it's telling us we can get rid of the closing tag here. Let's go ahead, copy this, and put it at the top as well before our posts. So if we have many posts in between, we can go ahead and navigate either from the top or from the bottom. All right, so let me go ahead and recompile this, and let's see what happens. All right, so you can see we have pagination on both top and bottom, and it's working as expected. Yep, so looks fine to me. And as a bonus, let me go ahead and show you how we can remove this pages state here. Okay, So we don't really need to have this page state and sort of try to throw stuff and append stuff to it. We can actually use yield return to slowly return things. All right. So first of all, I will go ahead and grab, I will extract 2 points. I will extract the lower bound and I will extract the upper bound. Okay, let's go ahead, grab these two. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to actually perform this check here. So this lower bound here is where the check is going to be performed. And instead of inserting this value here, what I want to do is I want to actually just go ahead and say yield return 1. Okay, and what this will do is this will emit a value from this iterator and it will carry on doing its thing. Okay, so it doesn't exit the function here, it will carry on executing. So now what I can say is if the lower bound is basically -1 and let's say is more than 1, since I know that 1 is really going to be my lowest bound, let's go ahead and yield return -1 here. And we can delete this page insert here as well. All right, so now that we're covering the initial pre-pending of 1 and the initial dots. Now we want to emit the mid-range of the values. All right, so this is where I'm going to move the for loop down here, and I'm going to go ahead and just say yield return I, and I'm going to cut this out. All right, so now we want to do the same but with the upper bound. So let's go ahead, grab the upper bound, and we will say if it's not equal this, but remember that this page insert is happening before here. So what we want to do is actually emit the page count at the end. So let's go ahead and yield return the page count at the end here, and let's remove this insert. And what we can do then is we can grab the upper bound and we can say, right, if the upper bound, no, the upper bound is it can be less than page count, or yeah. So let's say page count. So this is our total amount of pages. If we are straying from this by 1, all right, so the page count, let's say it's 15. We are on page number 11. Our upper bound will be 13. And 15 minus 13 will be 2. So that's when we want to yield return -1. Okay, so now what we can do, we don't need pages anymore. Let's delete this state here. And we're essentially just going to be working off these thingies here. All right, this is essentially pure calculation. This is going to be all on the stack. I mean, the benefits of this, I don't think I will state them, but this just looks cooler and makes you a hipster programmer, okay? So let's go ahead and see this work. If it still works, if we go to number 4, number 5, so we get the dots, so you can see 1, 3 dots, and let's check the upper bound works as well. So the number 13 was really the cutoff point, 12, still cutoff point, 11, we have the 14 missing, and again, so yeah. So a nice long little episode. Hopefully you've learned quite a bit from this. I'm hoping this last part with yield return hasn't confused you too much. I think this is a rather nice way to learn about how yield return works if you've never seen this kind of syntax before. Other than that, there you have it. You have your own smart pagination. If you want to have your own style for smart pagination, go ahead on Google, type in pagination best practices or examples, and you will get a better idea of how to implement pagination, or rather, you will know the result, how your result should look like, and you have a little target to aim for. It's a good practice. It makes your brain turn on a little bit. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and make sure to like, subscribe, And as always, see you in my other episodes.